At the easternmost part of the Sahara Arabic belt lies the Thar Desert, which was once the home to a flourishing ancient civilization. Long ago, a great river flowed here, the Saraswati, named after the venerated goddess of inspired learning and speech, as recounted in the Vedic texts. Over time, as summer monsoons weakened, the river dwindled to a trickle, and this once abundant land became arid, hot, and windy, today making it an environment hostile to all forms of life. Yet despite these inhospitable conditions, the Thar is currently one of the most populated hot deserts on Earth. Agriculture and extensive animal farming are the main activities of its inhabitants, who stem from various cultures and religions. Overgrazing in the course of the last 50 years has further accelerated the desertification of this already fragile ecosystem. Our adventure with the Thar began in 2014 when, with meticulous surveying using Google Earth satellite images, we discovered geometric lines similar to the Nazca geoglyphs in Peru. In total, we identified 8 sites, all in Rajasthan, in the area of Jaisalmer. Geoglyphs are large-scale man-made features built on the surface of the Earth. They can be found on all continents and are considered by archaeologists as a type of rock art, similar to cave drawings and petroglyphs. While typically abstract and geometrical, these drawings occasionally portray anthropomorphic and biomorphic figures. Geoglyphs are usually constructed using one of 2 techniques. The first, which is most commonly found in desert environments, consists in the removal of surface oxidized stone pavement to expose a bright sandy layer below. The second involves the gathering and piling of debris on the soil surface. The oldest geoglyphs date back to the Upper Paleolithic period, while others, such as the Mare Man in South Australia, are believed to be more contemporary creations. To date, most are located in South America, with the most famous being those found in Peru's Nazca Desert. The function and meanings of geoglyphs are thought to be extremely diverse. Most experts consider that they were created as sites, whether for rituals and ceremonies, as defensive structures, as landmarks, or to have astronomical functions. Following on from our thrilling discoveries observed through satellite images, we organised a trip to the Thar in late 2016 to verify our findings on the ground. Our goal was to obtain hard data which would substantiate our research that had been solely virtual until then. We arrived in deepest Rajasthan after 3 challenging days of travel that included a 10-hour night train, disoriented by our plunge into this remote Indian environment. We'd brought a drone with us which would prove essential for our research. Our close flyovers usually led us to identify furrows dug for tree plantations that have generally failed, and enigmatic lines recently built for unknown reasons. The originality of the designs near the village of Boha, 41 kilometers north of the golden city of Jaisalmer, aroused our curiosity. We were eager to pay them a visit. We left the chaos of Jaisalmer behind in a tuk-tuk driven by Tingu, who had mastered the art of slalom between sacred cows. Along the way, a stop at site number 5 allowed us to observe the lines recently created around the Hindu temple, Kale Dungarai. Once at Boa destination, we immediately launched the drone at 300 meters above the ground. The images captured were impressive. They confirmed that the patterns of Boha differed from the other sites in many regards. The shapes, their monumental size, the absence of portions of lines suggesting their ancient origins, and the lack of plantations. Night fell quickly. It was December 15th as the sun slipped away. The temperature dropped abruptly. The cold air invited us to light a fire near the camp. The scenery around us was constantly changing. The full moon and the clouds eclipsed the starry sky during this memorable evening. But consumed with the enigma of the Boa lines, sleep evaded us. The largest geoglyph unit draws a spectacular 12-kilometer line that winds harmoniously over an area of 100,000 meters. Its imposing size is almost twice the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This figure has 12 windings gradually metamorphosing. On the eastern side, its lines are straight, some with a perfect north-south orientation. On the southwestern flank is a gigantic serpentine line of about 11 kilometers on 90,000 square meters. It forms a sequence of 23 parallel lines connected with 22 half-turns, replicating a boustrophodon. This term, which literally means to turn like an ox, refers to a certain primitive script that can be read from left to right and then from right to left. The line continues with strange sinuosities that end in a small ovoid spiral. We carefully reconstructed 4,500 meters of missing sections on these figures. 2 sets of meandering lines extend them to the north and south. Around these 4 major units, we found a number of short parallel lines. They indicate that the Boa geoglyphs had a major extension before being eroded. A variety of archaeological artifacts are present on the territory of the geoglyphs. We located 9 monoliths of various shapes. The style of their carvings suggests that they date from the 19th century at the latest. Most impressive is a collapsed pillar that is covered with inscriptions which would indicate that devotion from the locals is still vivid. Nearby this, we observe 3 cairn-like structures of loose stones, similar to graves, indicating possible funeral activities. We also located 4 memorial stones with sculptures of Hindu deities and 2 sati stones. Sati was a Hindu custom of a widow immolating herself on the funeral pyre of a dead husband. It is impossible to give a precise date to the Boa geoglyphs based only on our observations. A conservative hypothesis would suggest that they were created at the same time as the memorial stones and may be therefore around 150 years old. However, other clues such as the advanced wind erosion of a milestone planted at the start of the Boustro at Verdun would suggest that they are much more ancient than this. The geoglyphs of Boer show a limited number of patterns drawn over a small area. A camel-drawn plough could have been used on the loose surfaces to dig the furrows. Nevertheless, their monumental size makes them a remarkable discovery. The conception of such giant figures supposes a complex way of thinking and knowledge in mathematics and planimetry. This is confirmed by the position of 3 monoliths, probably used as landmarks, and by the fact that the centre of the spiral is equidistant from its northern and southern ends. The kilometric dimension of Boer 1 and 2 has no equivalent in the world. After verification, we believe that these geoglyphs are the largest abstract geometric figures discovered to date. Their designs and juxtaposition are also unique and raise several questions. In which way do these abstract drawings relate to one another, if at all? Why do all the Boer lines have a beginning and an end? Why don't they ever cross over each other? Or how should we interpret the north-south orientation of the spiral? These geoglyphs are the first to be discovered in the Indian subcontinent, and thus mark an important contribution to our knowledge of these universal artifacts. It is urgent to protect this extremely fragile heritage, because the vehicles that have recently been driving on the lines have caused irreparable damage, as shown on these images. The last specificity, which is intriguing to say at the least, concerns the impossibility of observing these figures from the ground. A bird's-eye view at an altitude of 300 meters is necessary to perceive the 2 main patterns as a whole. Therefore, how could the creators of these ambiguous signs ensure that they were properly seen and interpreted? The American philosopher Charles Morris highlighted that something is a sign only because it is interpreted as a sign of something by some interpreter. From this logical reasoning comes an enigma. For which interpreters were these signs intended before our discovery? Could they be a way to communicate with the cosmos? Or do they commemorate a celestial event, observed locally but which has since vanished from memory? Local shepherds interviewed had no knowledge of their existence. New field studies should make it possible to date them and lead to a symbolic and archaeo-astronomical interpretation. We are convinced that these geoglyphs are closely connected to their cultural context and probably contain a universal message linked to the sacred and the cosmos.